In this video, we will discuss humanistic theory and theory application. First, let's review where we've been thus far. We focused on how environmental structure can impact behavior through developmental theories, behaviorism, social cognitive theory, constructivist, and information processing theories. We covered discipline techniques related to behavioral theory, such as reinforcement and punishment, behavior modification through shaping plans, and token economies. We've explored how observational learning, self-efficacy, and self-regulation can impact behavior, meaning the psychological and internal processes that influence behavior. So what's next? Education trends and research give evidence for new techniques which focus more on student-teacher cooperation. Things like creating a community of caring, such as was suggested by Gilligan and Noddings, which we discussed previously, and recognizing that students bring as much experience to the education table as the teacher. Students can teach teachers and vice versa. And a focus on students as human beings, recognizing that students have needs beyond academics and have an innate desire to grow. These ideas and assumptions come from the humanistic theory. The humanistic theory was formulated in response to the behavioral approaches of B.F. Skinner and the psychoanalytic approaches of Freud. Humanists believe that humans are innately good and have a desire to make the world better. It emphasizes the dignity and worth of humans and the human's capacity to develop personal competence, meaning a person has aspirations and desires to gain mastery and competency even without rewards or stimuli. Humanistic theory also places great emphasis on meeting the needs of the individual, no matter what the environment is. And lastly, it is based on a phenomenological approach, which is looking at the subjective rather than the objective. The approach does not simply examine the outcome, but the individual's perception of the experience. It's important to note that this theory is applied in many areas of psychology, not just education. So humanistic theory developed through the work of Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow in the 1970s and 80s. Maslow developed the hierarchy of needs model shown here, and he used it to explain the motivation behind one's behavior. We will be discussing motivation in more detail at a later date. He believed that people behave the way they do in order to satisfy their human needs. Side note, Maslow and his model are discussed in more detail in Chapter 11. However, the concepts of the humanistic theory and his hierarchy of needs model are applied in this week's chapters, Chapter 12 and 13. Let's look at the model. At the base of the model are physiological needs. These include things such as food, shelter, and warmth. Second are safety needs, physical safety, security, and freedom from fear. Third is belonging and love needs. For example, one might ask, am I accepted by my friends and family? Or do I belong here? Fourth is self-esteem. These needs include respect from others, achievement in one's work, and recognition from others. And lastly, at the top is self-actualization, which describes our need to realize personal potential, fulfillment, and contentment. Maslow stated that the lower level or deficiency needs have a stronger pull than the higher level or growth needs, which is why the lower level needs have a wider base or are part of the wider base of the pyramid. This means a person will stop trying to achieve esteem or self-actualization when physiological or safety needs are unmet. Furthermore, Maslow proposed that while all people aspire to self-actualization, many people do not reach it because of the focus on deficiency needs. If one's lower level needs are not being met, she will not begin working on her growth needs. Self-actualization generally occurs later in life, past young adulthood. The implications of this to education are that we must pay attention to students' non-cognitive needs as well. Physical needs, emotional needs, and psychological needs. Thus, when considering a student's behavior or misbehavior, school professionals must consider that it may be the result of an unmet need. Is the student hungry or tired? Does the student perceive school as a safe place? Is there a sense of belonging for all students? Is the student being esteemed and built up? From a humanistic perspective, educators may need to address a student's non-cognitive needs before a student's cognitive or academic needs. After all, how can a student focus on AP Stats, US History, or writing a research paper when he is concerned about his next meal, his physical safety, or his acceptance amongst peers? Approaching education from a humanistic perspective means a different approach to instruction and discipline. Instruction should focus on creating community, stress the importance of quality over quantity, and emphasize cooperation and belonging. Discipline procedures should recognize that misbehavior is the result of an unmet need. Assessing and meeting students' basic needs is important. Teacher is focused on influence rather than control of the behavior. Discipline is guided by choice and dialogue between the teacher and student, meaning correction of misbehavior is linked to a student's choices and natural consequences. And the teacher approaches conflict as an opportunity to problem solve rather than to be a judge who rules in favor of one student or another. As we just discussed, when school professionals take a humanistic viewpoint to working and engaging with students, it results in certain approaches. The same is true for all educational psychology theories. Chapter 13 of your text goes into detail on how an educator's viewpoint impacts their instruction of and interaction with students. The behavioral approach focuses on direct instruction. The information processing and social cognitive approach focuses on understanding and utilizing mental processes for learning, helping students understand and store information. The constructivist approach focuses on presenting students with opportunities to create personally meaningful learning and knowledge construction. The humanistic approach, which has been our focus in this lecture, focuses on caring for students' needs in a holistic way. And the social learning approach focuses on student learning through cooperation and the sharing of ideas and responsibilities. Keep in mind that all of these instructional approaches could be used in combination to meet a variety of student needs and interests. Lastly, we're going to move into a brief discussion of classroom management. While many of you may work with small groups of students or individual students rather than traditional classrooms of 24 plus students, this information can be helpful for understanding a student's experience or the teacher's perspective. It may also serve very useful when making accommodations or recommending accommodations for students in the classroom, such as with IEPs. Some teachers are more comfortable with classroom management than others, and as school counselors and school psychologists, you may be able to provide valuable insight to this area of teacher and student interactions. Chapter 12 of your textbook highlights some important aspects of classroom management, which are based on time-tested research. Jacob Kunin is said to have started the trend in researching classroom management and its effectiveness, or lack thereof. His research focused on preventative strategies, keeping misbehavior at bay from the beginning, and his philosophy was that good classroom management begins with effective lesson management, meaning if the lessons are well planned, organized, and executed, management tends to follow suit. Through his research, he developed some key ideas. They include ripple effect, with-itness, overlapping, effective transitions, group focus, and satiation. Kunin's key ideas really help one to plan for and prevent misbehavior. However, it is unlikely that even the best school professional will be able to avoid all misbehavior. Rettel and Wattenberg developed what they call influencing techniques to address situations of misbehavior. They also came up with several key ideas, such as planned ignoring, proximity and touch control, use of humor, program restructuring, criticism and encouragement guidelines, and post-situational follow-up. Classroom management is definitely an art that takes time to develop, and each teacher, counselor, or school psychologist is going to handle things a little differently. However, doing research, finding out what works, and having an idea of what you want your behavior management to look like helps a lot. For more details on these specific techniques, see Chapter 12 of your text. In conclusion, the humanistic theory of education focuses on understanding students' non-cognitive needs in addition to their cognitive or academic needs. Approaching the school environment with the humanistic theory results in new approaches to instruction and discipline. Educators focus on building communities and addressing conflict through problem solving. In addition, we looked at how each theory of educational psychology results in a different approach to learning and instruction. It was also highlighted that some general knowledge and understanding of classroom management techniques can be helpful in collaborating with teachers and parents while serving students.